We're constantly looking at the world in perspective, and we're so used to seeing things this way that drawings tend to feel a bit off when they digress from it. Familiarizing yourself with basic rules of perspective is an essential addition to your drawing repertoire. It's also something that's quite commonly overlooked, as it may seem a bit daunting at first, but the fundamentals of perspective are actually rather simple to grasp. Once you have a basic understanding of the rules and how to apply them, you'll be able to produce images that are much more believable. In this video, I'll walk you through the principles of 1, 2, and 3-point perspective. Everything starts with the horizon line. The horizon line represents the eye level of our viewpoint. Depending on the angle we're looking at things, the horizon line can be placed high, low, tilted, or even outside of our picture plane. But for now, let's just place it right in the middle, as if we were looking straight at the horizon. As a rule of thumb, when looking at things that are facing us directly, they appear to us in what is called one-point perspective. Now, an easy way to explain how this works is to draw a box in one-point perspective, and we'll start by just drawing a two-dimensional box here, like so. Here we have a front plane of a box, which is facing directly towards our viewpoint. In one-point perspective, the horizontal edges are parallel to our horizon line, and the vertical ones are perpendicular to it. So that's 2 dimensions so far. Now we all know that the further away we look at things, the smaller they appear to us. In order to achieve this effect in our drawing, we'll need to add what's called a vanishing point, or the point where things are so far away they disappear into the horizon. This will help us to establish all the parallel edges of the box in this third dimension. By drawing lines that connect the corners of the box with our vanishing point like this, we get what are called perspective lines. These are just guidelines that will show us the angle in which our receding lines should be placed. Now that we've drawn those in, we can start to estimate where the back plane of our box would be placed. The back of the box will be identical to the front one, just smaller, and we can easily draw it by connecting the perspective lines with these horizontal and vertical edges, just like the front of the box. When drawing 3D forms, it's always useful to try and visualize how they're constructed, so it's a good idea to treat them as if they were transparent and to include the lines in the back that would be hidden otherwise. A sort of skeleton, if you like. So, one-point perspective is used whenever we're looking at things directly. Typically it's used when drawing things like interiors or elongated spaces like a tunnel or a street. Sometimes you'll see it used in side views of cars to give them a bit more three-dimensionality. By using the same vanishing point, we can easily enclose this box in a room, assuming that the box is placed parallel to the walls. When drawing things that are viewed at eye level, you want to place them on the horizon line. For example, I can imagine that a window on this wall could be roughly at eye level. When we place something above the horizon line, the object will appear as if it was observed from beneath. Say we draw some sort of lighting on the ceiling here. placing the object completely above the horizon line makes all the perspective lines point downwards, and the bottom plane of it becomes visible from our viewpoint. While one-point perspective is useful for some scenarios, it can make things appear quite static. Let's move on to two-point perspective, which tends to be used more often in drawings as it makes things appear a bit more dynamic. We begin by drawing a horizon line, and this time we add two vanishing points on it. Vanishing point 1 and vanishing point 2. Now, with two-point perspective, we start by placing in one of the vertical edges of our box, and all the horizontal ones will converge in one of the two vanishing points. By drawing lines out from both vanishing points, we get two sets of perspective lines that are moving away from us, forming a perspective grid that helps us place things in three-dimensional space. And in this case, only the vertical edges of the box will be parallel. As opposed to one-point perspective, where one of the planes of the box was always facing us directly, it has now rotated to an angle, and it's one of the edges that is closest to our viewpoint. Let's draw another box, and this time start by finding the top of it. Once we have that, we add the vertical edges, all of which remain perpendicular to our horizon line. As you can see with the second box, the closer we move things to one of the vanishing points, the more distortion will appear. Usually, at least one of the vanishing points is placed beyond the picture plane or the canvas because of the way we see things in real life. Let me show this by drawing a smaller box over here. Having the vanishing points relatively far from the object results in a more natural look. If we now isolate this box by zooming in on it, you can see that the vanishing points used here are far beyond our picture plane. Once again, we start by drawing a horizon line as usual, add two vanishing points on it, and let's just find the top of the box first. Then we'll add a third vanishing point somewhere off the horizon line. This time all the parallel edges of the box in all three dimensions will be converging each to their own vanishing points. None of the edges are perpendicular to our horizon line, and the part of the box closest to us is one of the corners of it. Three-point perspective definitely gives you the most dynamic results out of the three, and it can actually get you the closest to how we see things in real life when used correctly. Typically, it's used when drawing tall things like buildings when viewed from above or below. Sometimes these two viewing angles are referred to as bird's eye view and worm's eye view. If we extend this box closer to the third vanishing point, you can see how it could be perceived as a tall building viewed from the bird's eye view. If we place our third vanishing point above the horizon line instead, we can get the illusion as if the building was being viewed from a street level. Three-point perspective can be a bit advanced for beginners, so I'd recommend getting comfortable with 1 and 2-point perspective first before starting to apply it. 2-point perspective is probably the most commonly used one amongst designers and architects, so I'd definitely get familiar with that. So, familiarizing yourself with basic perspective tools is important, but also just start drawing 3D volumes freehand and practice visualizing them without the grid. You can start by just drawing random rectangles in different angles and filling in the 3D form based on those. It doesn't have to be perfect, just be mindful of the vanishing points in the distance and draw your parallel edges with a bit of an angle between them. Extending your strokes beyond the edges of the form helps to visualize the perspective grid in your mind. Once you grasp the concept of vanishing points, the grids become less important, and you'll be able to just intuitively draw in perspective. You don't have to worry about nailing them exactly, just precise enough to create the illusion of volume, to make them believable. When you're comfortable with that, try drawing a pyramid. First, draw a square in perspective. Okay, now find the midpoint with diagonals. Draw a vertical guide up from the middle. And finally, just connect the corners to it. It's really satisfying when you get the hang of it, and it can feel like you've discovered a completely new way of drawing. You can even look for simple items around you and try to draw those in perspective. This is a great way to improve your perspective drawing, as you can set the difficulty and keep challenging yourself. Always start by laying out the bulk of the form and wireframe it. Then start figuring out how the different angles and curves fit in. Just remember to pay close attention to the proportions of things like we did on the last video. Once again, I put together a collection of photos for you to download and see how the perspective works on those. Try to spot the horizon line and see if you can figure out which one of the 3 perspectives they follow. If you found this video useful and want to support the channel, leave a thumbs up and make sure you won't be missing out on any future content by hitting the subscribe button. If you got any suggestions for things you'd like to learn more about, leave a comment below. We do read all of them. And that's it for now. Bye!